My family called him a hobbyist. They saw the paint under his nails and saw failure. I saw the world in his eyes and saw my future. We went to Sunday dinners like we were going to war. My father would ask, "Made any real money yet?" My sister would laugh and say, "His art is so decorative." They measured his worth in bank statements. I measured it in the way he saw light, in the way he held a brush like it was an extension of his soul. One night, after a particularly cruel dinner, Leo didn't speak on the drive home. We pulled up to our small apartment, the one above the laundromat. He finally whispered, "They're not wrong, you know." I took his face in my hands. "They have never been more wrong in their lives," I said. But my voice shook. A week later, my mother came over. She saw Leo's latest painting, a huge, dark, beautiful thing taking up our whole living room wall. "What is it?" she asked, not hiding her distaste. "It's called proof," Leo said softly. He didn't look at her. He looked at the painting. My mother just sighed. "It's very loud." She left soon after, her perfume lingering like a judgment. That night, Leo worked until sunrise. I woke up to find him asleep on the floor, a new slash of crimson paint across the canvas. It was angry. It was alive. It was no longer just a painting. It was a promise. He was no longer painting for them. He was painting despite them. Every stroke was a reply to their laughter. Every color was a word they couldn't understand. I made coffee and watched him sleep. I knew then that something had broken in him. But sometimes things need to break to let the light in. Sometimes they need to shatter to become something new. The masterpiece wasn't on the canvas yet. The masterpiece was the quiet fury growing in the quiet man they all underestimated. The man I loved. And the world was about to see what I saw all along. 6 months passed. The whispers at family dinners turned into full conversations held over our heads. They talked about real estate and stock portfolios, while Leo and I ate our modest meals in silence. One Sunday, my father finally said it out loud. "You should leave him," he told me in the kitchen, his voice low but firm. "It's not too late. You can still have a real life." I didn't answer. I just looked at Leo through the doorway, sitting alone at the table, tracing the wood grain with a paint-stained finger. Leo's painting was finished. It was terrifying and magnificent, a storm of dark blues and violent golds, with a single slashed line of crimson cutting through the center. He called it Echo. He entered it in a small local gallery competition. The entry fee was $200, money we didn't have. I secretly sold the diamond earrings my grandmother left me to pay for it. I never told him. The night of the gallery opening, my family didn't come. "We have a charity gala," Sarah texted me. It was a lie. I wore a simple black dress. Leo wore his same blazer. We stood in the corner, watching people glide past Echo with polite, disinterested glances. An older man in an expensive suit paused. He stared for a long time. Then he moved on. Leo's hand found mine. His palm was damp. We left early. We got burgers from a late-night diner and ate them on a park bench. "It's okay," Leo said, though his voice was thick. It was a long shot. The rejection letter came 2 weeks later, a polite email from the gallery. "Thank you for your submission. While we admired the technique, it does not fit our current curation vision." Leo read it once, then closed his laptop. He didn't paint for 3 days. He just sat by the window watching the rain. On the 4th day, a different email arrived. It was from the older man in the suit. His name was Alistair Vance. He was a collector. He'd taken a photo of Echo that night. "The painting haunts me," he wrote. "I would like to see the rest of your series. Are you represented?" Leo read the email aloud to me, his voice a whisper of disbelief. I started to cry, not sad tears, the kind that come when a door you've been pounding on for years finally cracks open. We met Alistair at his penthouse. His walls were lined with famous, frightening art. He poured us tea and asked Leo one question. "What does the red line mean?" Leo didn't hesitate. "It's the cut," he said. "The moment you stop hearing the noise and start listening to yourself." Alistair bought Echo on the spot, for $10,000. He wanted to see the rest of the series, the paintings that existed only in Leo's sketchbook. We walked out of that building, the check in Leo's pocket, and the city looked different. The air tasted different. We weren't just a couple anymore. We were conspirators, partners in a quiet revolution. Leo looked at me, the doubt in his eyes finally replaced by a dawning, fierce certainty. "This is only the beginning," he said. And for the first time, I knew he believed it. Alistair Vance became a ghost in our lives, a quiet, powerful presence. He visited our apartment, a space that suddenly felt too small for the dreams now growing inside it. He flipped through Leo's sketches, his fingers careful, his eyes missing nothing. "This," he said, pointing to a series of charcoal studies. "This is the collection. Not just one painting, the whole story." He offered Leo a contract, a monthly stipend to finish the series, a solo show in his private gallery in the city. No cuts, no commissions until the work sold. It was an artist's fantasy. Leo signed with hands that trembled only slightly. We didn't tell my family. The silence was our secret weapon. When my mother called, her voice was syrupy with false concern. "How's Leo's little hobby going?" she'd ask. "Any buyers?" I'd smile into the phone. "He's working," I'd say. And he was. He was a man possessed. Leo quit his part-time job at the frame shop. Our apartment transformed. Canvases leaned against every wall. The smell of oil and turpentine was a perfume of promise. He worked through the night, through dawn, through another night. I'd bring him coffee and watch the series take shape. It was called The Anatomy of a Whisper. It was brutal. It was beautiful. It was everything they said he couldn't be. My sister Sarah showed up unannounced again. She stepped into the chaos of creation and wrinkled her nose. "God, it smells like a hardware store in here." Her eyes scanned the new paintings, bigger, darker, more complex than Echo. She was quiet for a long moment. "These are different," she admitted, a flicker of something like confusion in her eyes. Not respect. Not yet. But the absence of mockery was a victory. "They're almost done," Leo said, wiping his hands on a rag. He didn't look at her. He looked at his work. Sarah left without her usual parting jab. She just looked back once from the doorway, her gaze lingering on a painting of a figure breaking through a wall of shadow. She didn't say a word. The night before the solo show, Alistair came for a final viewing. He walked through our cramped living room-turned studio, a curator in a cathedral of clutter. He stopped in front of the largest piece, the finale of the series. A canvas taller than Leo, awash in midnight blue and shattered gold, with a single, solid beam of pure white cutting through the center. "What's this one called?" Alistair asked, his voice hushed. Leo stood beside him, paint in his hair, exhaustion and triumph in his posture. "It's called The Sound of Light." Alistair nodded slowly. "It will be the centerpiece." He turned to us, a rare smile on his austere face. "Prepare yourselves. Tomorrow, the world sees." We couldn't sleep that night. We sat on our fire escape, looking at the city lights. Leo's hand was in mine, his skin still rough with dried gesso. We didn't talk about my family. We didn't talk about the past. We talked about the future, a future that, for the first time, had shape and color and light. "Are you ready?" I asked him. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw the boy they'd laughed at, and I saw the man he'd become. They existed together in the same fierce, gentle gaze. "I was born ready," he said. "I just didn't know it until I had you." Below us, the city hummed, oblivious. It had no idea that in a small, messy apartment above a laundromat, a revolution had been painted into existence. And tomorrow, the whispers would finally stop. The gallery was all white walls and sharp light. Alistair's space was famous for discovering artists who hurt to look at. Tonight, it was Leo's turn to hurt them. We arrived early. Leo's paintings were hung with precision, each one a chapter of our silent war. A small card beside each one bore only a title and his name, Leo Vance. He'd taken Alistair's last name as his artist name, a son by choice, not by blood. I wore a simple emerald dress. Leo wore the same blazer, but this time he stood differently. He didn't shrink into the fabric. He filled it. My family arrived an hour in, a tight cluster of black tie and judgment. My father led them in, his eyes scanning the room not for art, but for social capital. They stopped at the first painting, a swirl of deep gray with a single bleeding cut of silver. Interesting, my father said, the word empty. Sarah leaned in, reading the title on the card. The First Laugh, she recited. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the painting. Her smile faltered. The gallery filled. Important people with quiet voices and expensive glasses of champagne moved through the room. They didn't just glance. They stopped. They stared. They leaned in close, then stepped back. A low, respectful murmur replaced the clinking of glasses. Alistair moved through the crowd like a conductor. He brought a tall, severe woman in a black suit to meet Leo. "This is Margot Finch," he said. "She represents the Valiant Auction House." Margot didn't smile. She shook Leo's hand and said, "Your work is not pretty. It is necessary. I want The Sound of Light for our contemporary spotlight auction next month." Leo just nodded. I squeezed his arm to keep myself steady. My mother found me near the refreshment table. "People seem to like them," she said, her voice carefully neutral. She was holding a glass of water, not champagne. "They do," I said. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time in years. "You believed in him," she stated. "I always did." Across the room, I saw my father standing before the largest painting, The Sound of Light. He had his hands clasped behind his back, his head tilted. He stood there for 5 full minutes, not moving. I couldn't see his face. The evening reached its peak. Alistair called for quiet and gave a short, elegant speech about truth and friction and the courage to create. He didn't introduce Leo. He didn't need to. The paintings had already done it. As the crowd began to thin, my family regrouped by the door. They were leaving without saying goodbye, but my father broke from them. He walked over to Leo, who was speaking softly with Margot. My father waited. When Margot moved away, he stepped forward. He didn't offer his hand. He just looked at Leo, his expression unreadable. "The red line," my father said, his voice rough. "In the big one, what is it?" Leo met his gaze, calm, steady. "It's the moment you realize the noise is just noise, and you start to hear your own voice instead." My father was silent. He gave a single, slow nod. Then he turned and walked back to his family, ushering them out into the night without another word. We were among the last to leave. Alistair handed Leo an envelope. Inside was a list. Every painting had sold. Next to The Sound of Light was a single word: reserved. We stepped out onto the cool sidewalk. The city night air had never tasted so clean. Leo took my hand, his palm warm and sure. "It's done," he whispered. But he was wrong. It wasn't done. The sale was just the beginning. The auction was next. And that was where the world would hear the sound of his light for the very first time, and my family would have front row seats. The Valiant Auction House wasn't a gallery. It was a theater. Chrome and dark wood, velvet ropes, hushed voices that carried the weight of money. We sat in the back, Leo and I. He wore the same blazer. I wore the same emerald dress. We were ghosts in the room where our future was about to be decided. My family sat 3 rows ahead, my father's rigid posture unmistakable. Sarah kept glancing back, not at us, but at the stage where The Sound of Light stood veiled under a black cloth. Margot Finch took the podium. Her voice was a dry, clear bell. "Lot 47, The Sound of Light, oil and mixed media on canvas. The final piece from the acclaimed Anatomy of a Whisper series by Leo Vance." The cloth dropped. A collective breath was drawn and held. On the giant screen behind it, every slash of gold, every violent swell of midnight blue, that single, flawless beam of white was magnified for the room to swallow whole. The auctioneer began. "We open the bidding at 100,000. A paddle went up immediately, then another. The numbers climbed in a steady, terrifying cadence. 200, 3, 5. My hand found Leo's. He wasn't breathing. 700,000. The voice came from a man with a salt and pepper beard near the front. 800. A woman on the phone representing someone unseen. My father did not move. He did not lift his head. He stared straight ahead at the painting, as if deciphering a code only he could see. 1 million. The room rippled. A barrier had been crossed. The bid slowed, became a duel. 1 million too. 1,000,003. And then, a new voice, calm and clear from the right side of the room. 2,000,000. It was Alistair Vance. He wasn't looking at the auctioneer. He was looking at the painting, a quiet claim in his eyes. He was buying back his prophecy. The room fell silent. The auctioneer called the count. 2,000,000 once, 2,000,000 twice. My father's hand twitched. Then slowly, deliberately, he raised his paddle. Number 309. 2,500,000. His voice did not waver. A shockwave went through the room. Sarah spun in her seat, her face pale with disbelief. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Alistair smiled, a small private thing, and gave a slight, conceding nod. He had made his point. The war was won. 2,500,000, going once, going twice it sold, to paddle 309. The gavel fell. The sound was final. It was the sound of a door locking, the sound of a laugh, dying. Leo's hand was crushing mine. Tears were streaming down my face, silent and hot. He looked at me, his own eyes bright with a storm of triumph and sorrow. The man who had been offered pity was just paid $2.5 million for his pain. Afterward, the crowd swirled, but it parted for us. My family stood in a stunned huddle. My father approached, the winning bid slip in his hand. He stopped before Leo. He didn't offer congratulations. He didn't offer an apology. Those words were too small for the canyon now between them. He just held out the slip. "It belongs in the family," he said, his voice gruff. It wasn't a gift. It was a surrender. It was an admission. He had paid a fortune to own the proof of his own mistake. Leo looked at the slip, then at my father's face. He didn't take it. "Hang it where you can see it every day," Leo said softly, "and remember the price of a whisper." He took my hand, and we turned. We walked out of the auction house, past the stairs, past our past. We stepped into the cool night, not as the people who had entered. The city's noise was different now. It wasn't a mockery. It was an applause. We didn't go home. We walked. And for the first time in all the years I had loved him, we walked in a silence that held no fear, no doubt, no echo of anyone's laughter but our own. The masterpiece wasn't on the wall. It was the quiet, unshakable truth walking beside me, hand in hand, into a future we had painted for ourselves, stroke by defiant stroke.